What's up, and in today's video I'll be showing you how you can improve in PvP faster than it would take you to click the subscribe button. I have many tips and tricks to help you on your PvP journey. I may not be the best PvPer, but I certainly have enough experience for a full beginner's guide. This video will cover all game modes and everything you will need to know when PvPing. This tutorial is for newer versions of Java Edition, so if you're on 1.8 or Bedrock Edition, sorry guys. The settings you use are very important. Most settings are very tiny details but can affect your gameplay a lot. Turning view bobbing off will help you see better when sprinting. You also want to turn your FOV up to see more on your screen. Most people use 90, but anything around 85 to 100 will work just fine. Just do what feels right. You should also turn off distortion effects because when you apply speed it will make your FOV super high and harder to adjust to. Next, you need to find good keybinds. Keybinds you should change are your F5 mode to something easier to press on your keyboard, and changing your 6, 7, 8, and 9 keys to a letter on your keyboard would also be optimal. The reason you should change those to something else is because it's really hard to press the numbers fast, and it's a lot easier to press a letter closer to your movement keys. But make sure you can press them very fast to reach your entire hotbar as fast as possible. For the best FPS possible, choose settings that will give you 120 plus FPS. If you have a good computer, this means you can enable higher settings, but try to keep it at an average of 120 or above. If you have a monitor that's 240Hz or higher, you should enable VSync. This basically syncs your frames with your monitor's hertz to create a smoother experience. But the reason you shouldn't enable it if you have below 240Hz is because it caps your FPS to your hertz. Meaning, if you have a 60Hz monitor, it will be smoother, but it'll still be 60 FPS, which is pretty bad. I have a 240Hz monitor, so I have VSync enabled. You should also turn damage tilt down to very low or to 0 to make it easier to know what's happening when you're hit. A key part of PvP is understanding how saturation works. Saturation is how your hunger and health can regenerate when eating food. Saturation is invisible unless you have the apple skin mod. With apple skin, you can see how much saturation you have. When you do activities such as sprinting, mining blocks, or jumping, you will lose saturation. When your saturation bar is empty, you will lose hunger instead of saturation. Over time, you will heal up. You also need to understand how to hit your opponent. The ideal weapon you should use are the sword, axe, and bow. Sometimes this can vary, but these are the main ones you want to use. The bow isn't as good in late game, but can still prove useful like in cart or in the right scenario. The sword is used for combos, crit chains, and a lot of the time it gives the most damage. The axe is mainly used for disabling shields or an early game where you can deal lots of damage. Here are different types of ways you can hit your opponent. There's the regular sword hit. This does no extra damage and deals a little bit of knockback. Then there's the sprint hit. You can do this by sprinting while you're hitting. Then there's the critical hit. This is done by jumping in the air, and while you're falling down, you hit your opponent. It deals 50% more damage. A critical hit cannot be performed while moving forward, though. You can use these hits to your advantage. The regular hit isn't very useful, but the sprint and critical hits are very good. Crits are a way to kill your opponent fastest. This is what you want to do right before the fight. You usually need to eat 2 or maybe 3 gaps to fill your saturation bar. You also want to apply your buff potions. Your buff potions are always counted in sets. There's fire resistance that lasts 8 minutes, speed 2, and strength 2. You can sometimes add other potions such as regeneration, but strength, speed, and fire res are the basis for fighting. These effects will turn the tables on your fight. If you have the option to carry these, carry them. The only situation you don't need potions is in crystal, where crystals do way more damage and it's not worth it to carry them. I recommend having at least 3 sets of pots in a fight, minus 1 fire resistance. The reason this is because fire resistance lasts much longer than speed and strength, so you don't need as much of it. There are a few main strategies you might want to use when fighting. You can play Drain or go for a quick drop. These both take lots of practice to master, but can be very good if used correctly. When playing Drain, you'll need to use your items wisely. This means prioritizing breaking their armor and draining their materials instead of going for the kill right away. You won't want to play aggressively, and you will need to conserve resources for the endgame. If you're going for a quick drop, you should take a lot of risks. You'll play aggressively and try to shred their health as fast as possible. Putting heavy pressure helps this because they don't have enough time to heal, leading to a quick death.
A lot of it relies on them not knowing how to counter and forgetting how to heal or hold their totem. This strategy is very risky, so make sure you know what you're doing. So in the early game, pick one of these strategies and do everything keeping that in mind. If you quick drop someone, there won't be an end game, but if you play Drain, the fight will last a long time and there will definitely be an end game. This is where both you and your opponent are running out of items. Your armor is getting low, you're running out of potions and gaps, and the fight is getting a bit lengthy. At this point, you'll try to break their armor and conserve items. The only way either of you could die is if you run out of potions, golden apples, or your armor breaks. This is what you will want to drain your opponent of, especially armor. Try to get as many hits as possible on them. It doesn't matter if they get low because they can heal back up if they want, but they can't heal their armor. Once their armor breaks, it's almost impossible to lose. But to make sure your armor doesn't break, use XP bottles. You should always have mending on your armor to make sure you can heal your armor. Freaky Fang has a good tutorial on mending, so I'll leave a link to his video in the description. Now that you know how to kill anyone, subscribe. It would help out a ton. Also, click the like button. It lets me know you enjoyed.